welcome back to Fun Facts with Faith. As I said yesterday, today we're going to be talking about the incubator. If you walk into a NICU now, there's an incubator in every room. It is the mainstay technology for caring for premature infants. But it has an interesting and slightly sordid history. So in the late 1800s, 1 in 5 babies was dying in infancy. And 19 out of 20 births were happening at home, which is fine if you're healthy, but there was just sort of very little to be done for premature babies, even if they did make it to the hospital. Our level of technology in this realm was basically heat up a brick, put it in the crib, and cross your fingers. Around this time in France, there was an obstetrician named Dr. Etienne Tarnier, and he had observed the use of incubators for chicks at the Paris Zoo, and was experimenting with the use of incubators for premature infants. He had a colleague or sort of contemporary, Dr. Pierre Boudin, who started publishing on these incubators in 1888, but he did not really get a lot of traction with the medical establishment. He enlisted the help of an associate, Martin Coney, to exhibit the incubators at the Berlin World Expo in 1896. Coney went one step farther than just displaying the incubators. He asked Berlin Charity Hospital to borrow some babies. The hospital really was not optimistic about these babies' chance of survival, so they said, what the heck, fine. They lent him 6 babies. And so, Coney sets up the exhibit with Boudin, and they have their 6 babies in the incubators. And it was really successful. People called it the child hatchery. All 6 of the babies survived, and they wrote drinking songs about it. It was a whole thing. So Coney decided to take a show on the road, so to speak. He took it across the pond to the US and to the Omaha World Fair specifically. And then in 1901 to the Buffalo World's Fair, where parents from across the city brought Coney their premature babies, hoping for a miracle. He took in 52 babies over the course of that fair, and 48 of them survived. And sort of at the same time that all of this was going on, there was a new fad sweeping the country, which was amusement parks, which sort of capture all the excitement of a traveling show, or a sort of special one-off exhibition like a World's Fair, and institutionalize it. And in fact, by 1920, every U.S. city with a population over 20,000 had its own amusement park. So this was really quite a boon to Martin Coney. His display in Buffalo had caught the attention of some businessmen who were building a new amusement park at Coney Island. This would be Luna Park. And they made Coney and his babies a sort of central facet of their park, and they called his exhibit the Infantorium. The interesting part of this is that Coney was not really just in it for the money. As he was traveling from show to show, and he exhibited at almost every major show in the US in this sort of period, he was giving demonstrations of his incubators to local doctors and trying to convince them to sort of take them up. And he offered to donate incubators to local health departments after the shows were over, and really just was not having any luck. There were a couple reasons for that. Not the least of those reasons was the contemporaneous eugenics movement, which, people who were proponents of eugenics basically felt like the premature babies were really not sort of worth saving, and there was worry that they would pass on their sort of deficiencies, which is nonsense. It's nonsense, but it was a significant element of the time. There were also concerns about safety. Amusement parks were really not safe places. They burned down quite frequently. There were fires at Coney Island and this is not an exhaustive list, but it's just, off of a very brief skim. 1907, 1911, 1936, 1939, and 1944. And the 1911 fire actually included one of Coney's shows. Unfortunately, they were able to save all the babies, but it sort of had a bit of a sketchy air. It was a sideshow. It was not a serious medical pursuit. And this was just compounded by the fact that Coney wasn't a doctor. He claimed to have a license in Europe, which he just sort of never transferred to the States, but as best as can be determined now, he was never a doctor. That said, despite arguably being a fraud, his contributions to medicine are significant. I mean, babies in his care were more than 4 times as likely to survive to childhood, and he accepted babies of all races and all classes, and he never charged parents. All of the money that was necessary to run the incubators and take care of the babies was funded through admissions to the shows. Well, okay, so this was sort of the status quo for a while, and then after about 35 years of exhibiting incubators and premature babies, Coney finally found a supportive medical professional, and that was Dr. Julius Hess, who was a physician in Chicago. And so when Coney exhibited at the Chicago World's Fair in 1933, he did so with the explicit support of Hess and also the Chicago Health Commissioner. And after that fair, which ran for 2 summers, Chicago became the first city in the country to implement a sort of public health policy that was specifically targeted at premature infants, which included the use of incubators in hospitals. And, you know, once Chicago got on board, other cities started following suit. One of the last holdouts was New York. Coney Island was the last amusement park that was accepting premature babies sort of into the 1940s. It closed finally in 1943 after a New York hospital opened the city's first department for premature infants. And with that, Coney sort of said, you know, my work is done. So that's the story of the infant incubator, and brought to the States by a non-physician, and originally a sideshow attraction, and now a mainstay of treatment. I was very fortunate to have been able to work as an NICU cuddler my first 2 years of med school, which is exactly as great as it sounds. Like, literally your job is to go into the NICU and cuddle the babies. It's wonderful. But I think that experience gave me a very great appreciation for everything that the NICUs do, and everything that's made possible by the technology that we have, including incubators. And so I'm glad that this worked out in the end, even if it had a bit of a questionable start. That's it for today. I'll see you tomorrow with another fun fact. Bye!